policy in almost 100 years. You have to go back to the Smoot-Hawley tariffs that were passed in 1930s. And by the way, those tariffs that Trump put on yesterday, many of them are higher than the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. Alex, let me tell you something. If you go to the U.S. Senate website and you type in Smoot-Hawley tariff, this is what they say. On June 13th, 1930, the U.S. Senate passed the Smoot-Hawley tariff, among the most catastrophic acts in congressional history.
True,
Now,
true. We are reading it too.
Listen, that statement is not from a political party, anything. It's from the U.S. Senate controlled by the Republican Party. The Republican Party U.S. Senate website says the Smoot-Hawley tariff was among the most catastrophic acts in congressional history. And then they go on to say it was so bad for the economy and so disenchanted the public that the public threw the Republicans out of the House, the Senate, and the presidency in the 1932 election. This is the U.S., the Republican-controlled U.S. Senate website, senate.gov.
Yeah, and
now think about that. When you think about that, we are going back to the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which the Senate has described as one of the worst acts ever passed. Now here, it was not done because Congress, in its wisdom, gave all the power to the president. He did it by executive order.
Right.
Back then in 1930, you couldn't do that. It had to be the Congress that passed these tariffs.
Well,
but they themselves, called it one of the most disastrous acts in history. So, unless they get negotiated down, very, very quickly,
right.
I think that it's going to be very, very hard for stocks to make any progress. And the economy recession probabilities have probably gone above 50% now.
So, Professor, though, do you see any potential for support for this market in the interim? Maybe we do get some change in policy from the White House. Maybe some of these other pro-business policies that Trump promised on the campaign trail comes to fruition. Right now, and I understand the analogy with what happened in 1930, we were also in the middle of what ended up being the Great Depression when that came about. So we were already in a precarious economic situation. The economic situation, at least coming into 2025, was actually relatively strong. So just playing devil's advocate here, is there a sense that maybe the worst case impact might be blunted?
Well, I think the Fed has to lower interest rates now. I had gone from one that's saying that I didn't think there were going to be many interest rate cuts this year, but now I think the Fed will be forced because I think there will be a very negative effect on employment. By the way, world trade now is higher as a percent of GDP than it was in 1929. And by the way, this was 1930. Things got much worse after the Smoot-Hawley tariff. 31 and 32 was the worst part of the Depression. Now, listen, I am not predicting a depression. I mean, the Fed made terrible mistakes back that followed the Smoot-Hawley tariff. It was a double blow. The Fed won't make those same mistakes again. So I'm not predicting something like that. But this was the first step to the economic situation that led to the Great Depression.
Okay, so Jeremy, this might be a simple question then. Is U.S. exceptionalism over?
When you say exceptionalism, are we referring to the markets or the economy?
I'm referring to kind of both. I mean, the economy grew when Europe couldn't get its foot in the door. The stock market has outperformed for 2 years.
I had great trouble, Trump blamed Mexico, Canada, Europe for draining the U.S. when we had economic growth in GDP higher than those countries over the last 35 years. And by the way, we had 35 years of consecutive trade deficits, during which time we outpaced virtually every country in the world. So, I'm quite sure about how that drained the strength of the U.S. Listen, the strength of the U.S. is really a belief that of entrepreneurship, of innovation, of acceptance of new things, of new ideas. I mean, I saw it as a professor. New students, coming in, they said, the U.S. is where you can try your new ideas. It's opening to new ideas, and I think this is still here. Yeah. And I think in many ways the Trump administration does support that. Yeah. So that part of exceptionalism, I think, is still there. These tariffs and disruption of trade on this massive scale, with virtually zero congressional input whatsoever. Actually, the Senate voted. Four Republicans joined the Democrats in saying, "Hey, slow down on these tariffs." To no effect. I mean, this is, we all know. Listen, what 41% of the revenue from S&P 500 firms, come from abroad. I mean, back in 1930, I would say probably 10 to 15%. So yes, we're not in that situation that we were back then, when we do have a responsible Fed that will prevent a depression. But nonetheless, we are much more tied to the international markets today than we were, 95 years ago.
Professor, we only have about 30 seconds left, but I'm just wondering if you could kind of speak less to kind of the institutional investors that are a big part of our audience here, and more to just the rank and file folks, Main Street, if you will. Because if there was anything that alarmed me yesterday, was how many calls and emails I got from friends and family who have no connection to the world of finance, worried about their retirement plans and their 401ks, et cetera here. You wrote a great book years ago, Stocks for the Long Run. I mean, what do you tell those people right now who look at this and are terrified?
I'm staying with stocks, and I think they should stay with stocks. The worst time to get rid of stocks is when you're going into a correction or even a bear market. The worst time to do that. I think stocks, when this ends, the political ramification, the economic, it will